Alright, so this video was originally a rant at the end of this video, but I kind of wanted to re-record parts of it and then bring it out as its own separate video because I feel like this is a topic that deserves that much attention. Okay, so sort of like the main idea here is I don't think we should be expanding the level cap by much, if at all. And we don't necessarily have to stop leveling up, but at the very least, I think we should stop gaining abilities in like a vertical manner and start adding them in a more horizontal manner. So like you get a new ability in the new expansion, but it's added at level 80 or something like that. It's like we need to stop making older content less fun. And that's kind of what we're going to be getting into here.
We probably shouldn't go all that much higher in the leveling systems. I feel like 90 is already a bit of a stretch because some of the problems you run into with a higher level is stuff like the cooler abilities pushed even further back. Leveling to 90 isn't really something to scoff at. Like, I know it's not as bad as some other MMOs, but it's still like a pretty big barrier to entry for a lot of people is having all the really cool abilities be locked at like really high levels. And yeah, I just don't know what to really think about that. I feel like we should focus maybe some more on class individuality instead of adding more abilities that people won't get to see until they're like in the latest expansion, at the end of the latest expansion, actually, because that's how it works usually. Is the coolest one is like at level 80, 90, 70, like basically every 10 levels you get like something really cool. At that point, you're not really able to use it for much unless you're doing, I guess, savage rating, which, most people I say probably aren't doing savage rating. You have a lot of abilities like Dancer's dance partner ability, where you unlock the class at level 60, but when you level sync down to lower level dungeons, you lose your ability to have a dance partner, which is kind of dumb because that's like a pretty natural feature of the class. Like a very basic and core mechanic is having a dance partner. And I don't understand why you wouldn't just scale down the buff instead of like completely removing that ability. Let's be honest here, if you're playing a new class, it takes a while to build up muscle memory. And I don't think there should ever be a point where it's like, oh yeah, I can't dance partner in this dungeon because it's at a lower level. And then you get used to that, and then you go to a higher level dungeon, and it's like, oh shoot, I forgot the dance partner. I just don't know. It feels like there's a number of things that are kind of like that, and it's kind of jarring.
And just for clarity's sake, let's talk about another ability similar to Dancer's dance partner, Sage's Cardia. Sage is a class that was added in Endwalker. It's a healer class, and it has this ability called Cardia. Cardia is an ability where you apply it to the tank at the start of the dungeon, or potentially other members, which is similar to the closed position ability that Dancer has, which applies a damage buff called Dance Partner. And it is maybe functionally slightly different because it functions more like a regen, but it is similar in form. It is a buff that is added at the start of a dungeon. Usually, it's not often changed between people, but sometimes it might be. And then pretty much forgotten about because it has passive benefits. And that ability is available at level 1. And so, all throughout, no matter what dungeon you are in, you will always have access to that ability, which again is not the case for closed positions, aka Dance Partner, which unlocks at level 60. And you remember that solution I talked about earlier, where we have a nerfed version of Dance Partner that is improved upon with the actions and traits menu later on? Well, Cardia has that. If the buff is too big at level 60 for what it should be at like level 15, then we should just scale down the base improvements and give it like a new trait to be upgraded later on at level 60 to what it is now. And it just doesn't make sense to me why these two things that are so similar, albeit I'm not saying they're the same, but they are very similar, are treated differently. And I understand too that Dancer was added in Shadowbringers, whereas Sage was added in Endwalker. So maybe they changed the stance on how abilities like that should be treated. I don't understand why they wouldn't just go back and update some of the old classes, and that's kind of what I'm saying here, is that sometimes these old classes need more attention. They need more attention. They need more detailed looks into like how their kit works. And especially in like lower levels where people are going to be a lot of the time. Now, I am talking about Dancer in this instance, which is a class that unlocks at level 60, so probably not going to apply to a whole lot of people. But like I said, I haven't leveled other classes. And if this is a problem with Dancer, it might also be a problem with one of the other ones I haven't leveled yet. And if it's a problem with one of those ones or a problem with a class that you start out with, then that needs to be looked at. Even though it's not as important for Dancer, I still think it should be something that is changed. Now, I realize this is a very specific instance, but I'm just giving an example of the tiny bit of jank that there is in a lot of the classes. Each one kind of has a bit of stuff that it's like, okay, maybe that's not quite how it should be. It's not a big deal in most cases, but I still think there's some room for an improvement, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to say here is that there are other things to focus on besides leveling up another 10 levels and balancing new abilities. There's other options available and like different things we could look at, right? All right, I think now we can move on to the next point. And I feel like there's something to be said as well with how unique each class feels in the PvP and how samey a lot of the classes feel in the PvE, especially within like the groupings like physical ranged and like magical ranged. You end up with this same kind of feeling, and maybe there's only like one class in each group that stands out. There's like a I think I've heard this mentioned before, like the homogenization of classes in Final Fantasy XIV is kind of becoming a thing more than it should be. I'm not sure how true that is, but it does sometimes feel like that might be the case. And the example that comes to mind when I think of that is how Summoner lost its dots, which I know isn't like super true to that statement, mainly because the Summoner rework was supposed to be a change because it wasn't technically a true Summoner. Having dots isn't like a Summoner thing. Summoning creatures is, but the dots that Summoner had was one of the most satisfying, if not the most satisfying, AoE in the entire game. You would put your two dots that you had, you'd put them both on the same enemy, and then you'd press another button, I forget what the name was, and that would spread it between every other enemy within a certain radius. And that was fucking cool. I loved that. It was so satisfying, and I didn't realize how much that mattered to me until I lost it with the summoner rework. And that's pretty much when I started leveling a bunch of other classes to try and find a new one to switch to. Which is kind of why I'm betting on my Green Mage in Dawn Trail. Like I'm really hoping the caster, which they haven't announced yet what it would be. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's Green Mage, and just have like a full-on dot class. Like I'd love that so much. I have been finding some luck with Machinist though. Machinist has been fun, but that's not the point. So like that's always the one that comes to mind for me. For other people, I could see them maybe having better examples. If any of you guys could write in the comments if you've played a class for a long period of time and have had it changed or feel like your class has been simplified a lot. And I guess if you don't think this is the case, like feel free to drop that in the comments as well because like I want to hear from as many people as I can because I think this is a very interesting topic. And I feel like it's one that people can have a discussion about and have a lot of different opinions on it. So like here's the thing, right? Like you level sync or you go to lower level stuff for like tomestones or whatever, and you lose your higher level abilities, which, you know, is understandable in a way, but also it kind of decreases the fun because the abilities are the fun as well in Final Fantasy when it comes to classes. So you lose the abilities, you lose a piece of the fun
for like every 10 levels you go down. I wish we would just stop leveling up and just let us have the abilities we have. Because we already have a lot of abilities on some classes. It's not like we need a ton more. I don't think we should go to 4 hotbars, and I'll leave a bit of that old rant that I had for that part about like scholar hotbars and stuff.
This is Scholar's hotbar, and it has 35 total slots taken up. So if you want to put something like a mount on your hotbar as well, that's all 36 slots in 3 hotbars filled. I don't think we should go above 3 hotbars, is kind of like what I'm getting at here.
And I feel like we should stop leveling completely, make new expansions so that you have multiple expansions of content where you're just playing at like full fun, full throttle, all the abilities, and you're good. You have your entire kit available. I'm so sick and tired of like, oh yeah, all this content, all this old content that you want to go back and do because there's so much content in Final Fantasy that you go back to it and it's like, oh, you can't use half your kit because half your kit doesn't exist at the point in time that this content existed. And I just don't want that to be the case anymore. And there is some stuff I mentioned earlier with Dance Partner where some core mechanics just completely disappear at lower levels and it feels a bit grating. Now, obviously, there's a lot of classes I still haven't leveled up, so this may be a more prevalent problem than I'm aware of.
Yeah, so at some point in the far-flung future, when I finally finish leveling all the different classes in the game, I might come back to this and make like a more in-depth video on all the different stuff I find kind of weird with each class. I feel like that could be like a fun idea. This wasn't supposed to be like a super long video. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. This was originally like a rant that was attached to the end of my Dawn Trail video reacting to the trailers, but I realized it went on for way too long, so I just kind of cut it down and tried to make it a bit more detailed since I was going to be making it into its own video. The other thing too is like I didn't write a script out for any of this, so if you see my shirt color changing throughout the video, I did have to come back and like revise certain segments and whatnot because they needed clarification or changes in some way. So not a big deal, but that's just kind of why that's happening, you know? All right, and before we close out the video here, I want to talk to you guys because the thing is, I'm not an expert in any of this, and Final Fantasy is my favorite video game. Even if I make criticisms of it, it is still going to be my favorite video game. And even if they don't do like anything, if they leave the game as is, I would still enjoy the game. I'm sure whatever they cook up, it'll be good. But I just wanted to actually like talk about this because it's something I don't see talked about as much. I see it every now and then in certain places, but it's not like a super common topic, at least from what I've seen. Are you okay with how things are right now and you're fine if things keep going the way they are? Do you like the way things have been going? Do you want to see classes become more varied, like kind of like how it is in PvP? Because the classes in PvP are very varied, but they also have like balance issues and other stuff that really makes it kind of ugh. But that's a whole nother topic. Whatever class you play, if you think there's a part of it where it should work differently than what it does, I'd honestly love to hear it. Like, put it in the comments. I want to see what people think of the classes they're playing. I want to see what the community consensus is on this topic and sort of like the more niche version of this topic for their class. Some of you guys probably only play like one class and that's it. And you know that class really well. Like, I want to hear stuff that I wouldn't be able to hear myself unless I go and I play it. So like, yeah, just let me know what you think. Even if you disagree with me, like that's totally cool. I'm okay with that. This is just like some thoughts I've been having. I'm not like dead set. I'm not gonna die on this hill, but it's something that I think should be talked about more, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. So, yeah, I'm gonna leave this one here. I think we've summarized as much as I can. Don't want to drag it out too long here in the outro. So, I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you liked the video. Cheers.